In this video, we're going to be going over how to pick your opening attempt for a snatch or clean and jerk in a weightlifting competition, and also how to warm up to that attempt. If you haven't checked out our last video first, you should go back and watch that. It's called Counting Cards at a Weightlifting Meet. It goes over just kind of how a session runs and how to estimate how long you have from when a session begins to when you have to walk up onto the competition platform. So you definitely want to have that kind of in the back of your mind as we're going over this stuff. It'll make a lot more sense. First thing, as far as picking an opener for your snatch and clean and jerk, that's the first thing that nobody's ever really sure on their first meet what they should be doing. As you progress in your lifting, as you get better, the way that you pick your opener is going to change. You know, a lot of times if you're trying to qualify for the American Open or you're trying to qualify for nationals, you have to total a certain amount per weight class. So that's really going to determine how much you open with. Or even if you're just trying to win the meet that you're lifting at and you want to get a gold medal, you need to be seeing, you know, what other people are doing to determine where you're going to open. But we really encourage everybody, assuming this is going to be your first meet or one of your first meets, not even to concern yourself with what the other people in your session or the other people in your weight class are doing, but just try to do the best that you can possibly do. Because the most important thing you can do is just get some competition experience and make lifts and just have a good time. So picking your weight, the best way to start is just to take the highest possible weight that you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you will never ever miss. That, you know, base level of weight, which is sometimes referred to as a minimum, is a really, really good place to start, because that way we're going to make a total. You'll make at least one snatch and at least one clean and jerk, and you won't bomb out. Ideally, I like to get people to hopefully have that minimum and open up within about 10 kilos or about 20 to 25 pounds of their max. That way, if all goes well by that third attempt, we can take a PR. But if your minimum weight is not within 10 kilos of the most that you've ever done, or again, about 20 pounds, the most important thing you can do is just work on your consistency with heavier weights and really get those minimums as high as possible. Because an average jump in a weightlifting meet is around 5 kilos. Really anywhere from like 3 to 7 kilos is a pretty normal jump. Again, 5 kilos is about 10 or 11 pounds. So if your minimum is not where you think it should be, just work on that consistency, and as soon as you feel comfortable with that weight, that's a really good place to open. Now, as we get into how to warm up, I just want to stress that this is not the one and only way to do this. A lot of people do it a lot differently. Some people like to do way more, some people like to do way less. This is just a standard that we use for our lifters that I think is a really good starting point, especially if you're unfamiliar with you know, how to warm up at a meet or what you think would work the best for you. This is a really good place to start. So we're going to lay it out for a snatch and a clean and jerk. First we'll put snatch here and clean and jerk over here. Let's say that your snatch, we're going to open up with 70 kilos. And let's say with your clean and jerk, we're going to open up with 95 kilos. Okay, now from here, when we have our openers, the first thing that we do is we lay it out on a percentage. We assume that 100% is your opener, and we would do percentages of that to warm up to it. So we start with 50% to 60% to 70% to 80% to 90% to 95%, and then 100% being your opener. All right, and we'll do the same thing for clean and jerk. Now, as we progress through these warm-ups, again, it's really important to remember that you might not be able to stick 100% to what you plan to. You know, if things are feeling really good, if they're feeling really bad, you can always change this number as long as the weight on the platform has not already exceeded whatever you want to change it to. So, you know, listen to your body as you're doing these warm-ups and don't necessarily try to go too crazy on too ambitious of a number just because you told yourself you would. Okay, so now that we have these openers, we're going to go in and fill in what the percentages would be. So, again, we'll just kind of make a rough estimate. 50% for 70 would be 35 kilos. 60 would be 42, then we're at 49, then 56, 63, and then we'll go up to 64 no, I'm sorry, to 67, up 4 kilos to 67. Now, we're going to use the example from the last video, assuming that this 70 kilo snatch, your 100% your opener, we're just going to assume that this is 15 lifts out. So if this right here is 15 lifts, we can just put a plus 15 right here, so we know the 15th lift is going to be your opener at 70 kilos. Now we want to space these warm-ups out about 3 minutes apiece. That way you're primed and ready 3 minutes away from this to go up and lift 70 kilos. That way we don't warm up too quickly and get to where you're warm and you're cooling down and you're just kind of walking around wasting time. And also we don't warm up too slowly to where you're called up onto the platform and you're nowhere close to opening with that weight. So from here, if we're plus 15 at 70 kilos, we can do this 95 at plus 12, 90 at plus 9, 80 at plus 6, 70 at plus 3, 60 at 0, and 50 at minus 3 minutes. Now, looking at these numbers, what this means is when there have been 12 lifts in the session, working from the ending back down, 15 lifts is your lift, 12 lifts is when you're doing this second to last warm-up, 9 lifts is when you're doing this warm-up, 6 lifts, 3 lifts. 0 lifts right here means when the session begins. When the first lifter is about to walk out and do his first lift, that's when you would do this one. And then this would be 3 minutes before the session starts. So looking at it like this, as far as the elapsed time before the session begins and the elapsed amount of lifts before you walk out is the easiest way to kind of keep track and keep timed on your warm-ups. And the easiest way to do that is just to keep a tally mark, right on your warm-up sheet. Make a tally mark every single time you hear the competition barbell drop on the platform. That's one lift. That's really basically as simple as it gets. And with this clock right here, there's a 10-minute clock before a session begins, and there's a 10-minute clock between the snatch and the clean and jerk. So again, that's really easy to keep track of that. For this, we're going to add in a little something extra just to show you how this can change a little bit. So we'll start 95 kilos. We'll just say, I guess this will be, we'll just go 45, 55, 65, 75, 85, and 90 for your warm-ups. Now let's say for this, you're only 7 lifts out from the beginning of the session. So if your opening attempt is plus 7, that would mean this is plus 4, this is plus 1, this would be minus 2 minutes, this would be minus 5 minutes, this would be minus 8 minutes, and this would be minus 11 minutes. So if you're in a situation where you're early in the session and you have to start warming up before that 10-minute clock begins, you can just, again, if it's on the snatch, you can just base it on the time of the clock versus when the session's supposed to start. Or in this situation, since there's going to be a 10-minute clock plus 1 minute, we would want to do that first warm-up lift when the last snatch of the session is about to go, because that's going to equal about 1 minute. 2 things to go over really quickly before we finish out on this. One, when you're up here for these 50% lifts, we want to make sure that you've already stretched, you've already foam rolled, you're already completely warmed up before you walk up to the bar to start warming up here. Because when you're watching the clock and you're tallying these lifts, you don't want to have to keep warming up other than just doing these lifts. So if that takes you 10 minutes to warm up, takes you 20 minutes, or it takes you an hour, make sure that you're warmed up and ready to go in relation to how long you're going to have before you have to walk out onto the platform. Also, don't get too frantic when you're warming up, because this is not that much time before you walk out. And a lot of times, if people aren't used to this, they'll get really nervous, they get a lot of adrenaline going, and they want to get going way too early. And so what we see a lot of times happen is people are lifting 90-95% of their warm-up lifts minutes before they should be, or even sometimes 10 or 15 minutes before they're even anywhere close to walking out onto the platform. So if you're not familiar with what to do, stick to this strategy. Don't get nervous and warm up too early, even if you see everybody else warming up too early, because we want to make sure that you're primed and ready to walk out onto the platform, not fatigued too early. So again, hope this and the last video with that help. If you're worried about getting those minimums up, go to outofsetbarbell.com and you can submit your lifts to be analyzed by us, and we'd love to help you with your form and technique to get those numbers up. Also, if you're in the North Carolina area, We host 4 meets a year, so you can always check on our upcoming competitions on there too. See you later.